It was a quiet morning in Vancouver when Keanu Reeves arrived at the small, tucked-away coffee shop he loved. He wore his usual simple clothes, blending in like an ordinary man. But this day was not ordinary. There was a small box in his hand, wrapped in a soft, blue cloth. Inside the box were the ashes of a young woman named Lily, who had once been his biggest fan. Keanu had never met Lily in person. She had written letters to him when she was sick, telling him that his movies and kindness kept her going during her darkest days. She was only 24 when she lost her battle with cancer. Her final wish was simple, that a part of her could stay close to the man who unknowingly gave her hope to live longer than the doctors expected. Lily's brother, Ethan, had reached out, asking if Keanu would accept the ashes and maybe scatter them somewhere beautiful. No one expected Keanu to say yes, but he did nod as he sat by the window. His eyes lingered on the box. He felt the weight of it, not just the physical heaviness, but the burden of a promise he was determined to keep. He remembered the words in Lily's last letter. She wrote that if he ever felt lonely, he could talk to her, and she would listen. The idea seemed silly, but as he sat alone, he whispered, "Thank you, Lily, for showing me what real courage looks like." The barista, a young woman with kind eyes, noticed Keanu's quiet tears. She placed a warm cup of coffee in front of him without saying a word. Sometimes silence was more comforting than any question could be. Keanu looked out at the rainy street, memories of his own losses flooding his mind. He had lost people he loved, his child, his partner, pain that never really left him. Now, holding Lily's ashes, he felt the same deep sorrow, but also a strange sense of responsibility. He wondered how someone he had never met could feel so close. When Ethan arrived, he looked nervous, clutching a worn-out backpack. He sat down, across from Keanu, his hands trembling. "Thank you for agreeing to this," Ethan said softly. "She loved you so much. You gave her hope when none of us could." Keanu reached across the table and placed his hand over Ethan's. "She gave me hope too," he said. "She reminded me that sometimes our smallest acts mean the most to someone else. I won't let her down." Ethan pulled out a faded photo from his pocket. It was Lily, smiling despite her hospital gown and shaved head. Her eyes shone with a light that seemed brighter than her suffering. Keanu stared at the photo for a long time. Then he took a deep breath and made a decision. He would not simply scatter her ashes and walk away. He wanted to make her wish matter. He wanted to do something more. Outside the coffee shop, the rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle. Keanu and Ethan stepped out together. Keanu tucked the box safely inside his jacket, close to his heart. He knew exactly where he wanted to take Lily's ashes. There was a place in the mountains, quiet and full of wildflowers, where he often went when he needed to escape the noise of the world. It was a place where he felt closest to the people he had lost. Now he would take Lily there to Dot as they drove. Through the winding roads, Ethan opened up about Lily's final days. He spoke about her laughter, how she made jokes even when the pain was unbearable. He shared how she would rewatch Keanu's old interviews, repeating his quotes about kindness and resilience. Each word Ethan spoke made Keanu feel the bond growing stronger, not just with Lily, but with the brother she had left behind. Hours passed, and the sun began to break through the clouds, casting a golden light on the wet earth. When they finally reached the trailhead, Keanu stepped out of the car and breathed in the crisp, clean air. He felt Lily's presence, as if the wind carried her spirit, playful and free. Ethan stayed behind, giving Keanu the space to walk alone. Step by step, Keanu climbed the path, his boots crunching on the gravel, the box pressed to his chest. He thought of all the people who saw him as untouchable, a movie star with everything. But here, among the trees and the flowers, he was just a man, broken and whole at the same time, carrying the ashes of someone who had believed in him when he couldn't always believe in himself. He reached the clearing, a small meadow surrounded by tall pines and wild blooms. Kneeling, Keanu placed the box on the ground. He opened it slowly, hands steady, but heart pounding. He felt a tear slide down his cheek as he whispered, "You're home now, Lily. Thank you for letting me carry you this far." In that moment, a breeze danced through the meadow, scattering some of the ashes into the air. They swirled like tiny stars, catching the sunlight, floating higher and higher until they disappeared into the sky. Keanu stayed there, on his knees, watching until the last speck was gone. He felt something shift inside him, a small crack, where hope could enter again. He stood up, brushed the dirt from his jeans, and looked around. He promised himself he would come back here often, not just for Lily, but for everyone he had lost. He would carry their memories forward, letting their love make him kinder, stronger, more human. As he made his way back down the trail, he felt the weight on his chest was lighter, but the love was heavier than ever. This was not the end. It was the beginning of something unexpected, something that would soon pull Keanu deeper into the lives of those Lily had left behind, and challenge him in ways he never imagined. Keanu sat in his car for a long time after leaving the mountain. Ethan was next to him, silent but grateful. The ashes were now part of the earth, free in the wind. But a question lingered in Keanu's mind, one he couldn't ignore. What more could he do for Lily? Her memory deserved more than a single day. In the mountains, he looked at Ethan, whose eyes were red from crying. Ethan seemed lost, like a boy who had just lost the last piece of family that made him feel safe. "What will you do now?" Keanu asked gently. Ethan shrugged. "I don't know. She was my best friend. My parents are gone. Lily was everything. I don't have much left." Keanu felt something deep inside him stir, a mix of guilt and purpose. He knew what it was like to lose your whole world. He couldn't stand the thought of Ethan drifting alone. Before he could stop himself, he heard his own voice. "Come stay with me for a while. I have a guest house. Take your time to figure things out. You don't have to be alone." Ethan's eyes widened. "You'd really do that? You've already done so much." Keanu just nodded. Sometimes we all need someone. Lily knew that. In the days that followed, Ethan moved into Keanu's guest house. At first, he kept to himself, staying quiet, slipping in and out like a ghost. Keanu didn't push. He brought him meals, left him books, and sometimes they'd sit together watching old movies in silence. They didn't need words. Grief made them understand each other without speaking. One night, Keanu found Ethan sitting in the dark backyard, staring at the stars. He joined him, sitting on the cold steps. "What's on your mind?" Keanu asked. Ethan let out a shaky breath. "She always wanted to help people. When she was sick, she talked about starting a charity for kids with cancer. She said no child should feel alone like she did. But we had no money, no time." Keanu felt his chest tighten. He could almost hear Lily's voice, a soft, hopeful whisper in the breeze. "What if we made it happen?" he asked. Ethan looked at him, surprised. "What do you mean, a charity?" "In her name, a place for kids like her. We could give them books, games, visits when they're lonely. Hope. You said she wanted that. Maybe that's why you're still here, to finish what she started." Ethan's eyes filled with tears. But they were not just sad tears. They carried a spark of something brighter. "You do that with me. I do that for her. For you. For everyone who needs it." In that moment, the two men sat under the stars, the weight of their grief balanced by a fragile new purpose. Keanu could feel Lily's spirit weaving between them, pulling them closer to something bigger than their own pain. The next day, they got to work. Keanu used his connections to reach people who could help. They met with lawyers, set up meetings with hospitals, and called friends who believed in the same dream. Each step brought new challenges. There were moments when Ethan felt too small, too broken to handle so much responsibility. But Keanu reminded him that Lily's courage lived inside him too. They came up with a name for the charity, Lily's Light. It was simple but beautiful, just like her. The idea was to create safe spaces in hospitals where sick children could read, play, and feel less alone. They planned events where actors, artists, and volunteers could spend time with kids, reminding them they were more than just their illness. As word spread, people wanted to know the story behind Lily's Light. Journalists called. Some wanted to turn it into a headline about Keanu's kindness. But Keanu refused to make it about him. He always turned the spotlight back to Lily, her bravery, and Ethan's devotion as her brother. Still, not everyone believed in their mission. Some critics said it was just another celebrity stunt, a short-lived idea that would fade. Keanu heard the whispers but ignored them. He had faced worse doubts before. He knew that doing the right thing was louder than any rumor. One day, while visiting a hospital for the first Lily's Light playroom, Keanu met a little girl named Ava. She was bald from chemotherapy, but wore a bright yellow dress. Her smile reminded him so much of Lily that it knocked the breath out of him. Ava looked up at him with wide eyes and asked, "Are you a real movie star?" Keanu knelt beside her. "Sometimes, but right now, I'm just your friend." She giggled and hugged him without fear. In that tiny hug, Keanu felt Lily's dream living on. This was just the beginning. The pain would never fully leave him or Ethan. But now they had a reason to stand up every morning, a reason to keep going. And somewhere, in the unseen places where love never dies, Lily was smiling too, her light growing brighter than they could have ever imagined. Weeks turned into months, and Lily's light began to bloom in ways no one could have predicted. Keanu and Ethan poured every ounce of their hearts into it. They held small fundraising events at first, bake sales, charity walks, and movie nights where people came not just to see Keanu, but to hear about Lily's story. What surprised everyone was how much Ethan began to change. The shy young man, who had once looked like a lost boy, started to stand on his own. He spoke at events, sharing Lily's dreams, his voice trembling at first, but growing stronger each time. Keanu watched him with quiet pride. Every time Ethan spoke, it was as if Lily was there too, her spirit stitched into every word. The world started to notice that this wasn't just about a celebrity doing a good deed. It was about the people, one famous, one unknown, bound by grief but building something that could outlive them both. Still, the journey was not always gentle. There were setbacks, money was tight, even with Keanu's support. Some hospitals were hesitant to let outsiders create spaces on their grounds. Legal paperwork piled up. There were nights when Ethan felt defeated, sitting at the kitchen table with forms scattered everywhere, his head buried in his arms. One night, Keanu found him like that. Instead of giving him a speech, he made tea and sat down across from him. He waited until Ethan lifted his head. "We're going to make mistakes," Keanu said, "but we'll fix them. Lily believed in us. That has to be enough for now." Ethan nodded, wiping his eyes. "I just don't want to fail her." "You won't," Keanu promised. "We won't." Their bond deepened. They became like brothers, each carrying pieces of Lily that kept them moving forward. When one stumbled, the other picked him up. Keanu opened parts of his own past that he rarely shared. He told Ethan about losing his daughter, about the nights he sat alone with questions that had no answers. Ethan listened, sometimes crying with him, sometimes just holding his hand in silence. Then came an unexpected test. One afternoon, they received an invitation to speak at a large charity gala in New York. It was a chance to share Lily's light with influential donors and partners who could turn their small dream into something global. Ethan panicked. He had never spoken on such a big stage before, and his old fear crept in like a shadow. "What if I mess up?" he asked Keanu the night before the flight. Keanu smiled softly. "What if you don't? What if you stand there and remind them that one small life can change the world?" Ethan took a deep breath. "Will you stand with me?" "Always." The night of the gala, the ballroom glittered with people dressed in black ties and shimmering gowns. Keanu, in his simple suit, looked out of place yet completely at home. Beside him, Ethan adjusted his tie for the 10th time, hands shaking, when they were called on stage. Keanu gave him a small nod, a silent promise that he wasn't alone. The lights were bright, but Ethan found courage in the darkness beyond them. He spoke of Lily's bravery, of the nights she lay awake fighting pain with laughter. He shared how she had written letters to Keanu, never expecting a reply, just hoping her words might reach him. He told the crowd how a movie star and a dying girl built an invisible bridge that now carried hope to so many. The room was silent, hanging on his every word. Keanu stood beside him, his hand resting gently on Ethan's shoulder, a steady anchor. In a sea of faces, when Ethan's voice cracked, Keanu stepped forward and finished the story. Together, they painted a picture of Lily's light that no one could ignore. When they finished, the applause rolled over them like a wave. People stood, some wiping tears from their eyes. That night, they raised enough to open 3 more playrooms in different cities. When they got back to their hotel room, Ethan collapsed on the bed, exhausted but smiling for the first time in weeks. "We did it," he whispered. Keanu sat on the edge of the bed, looking out at the city lights. "No, Lily did it. We're just carrying her torch." But deep down, Keanu knew it was more than that. It was not just Lily's light anymore. It was their light too, a symbol of what could grow from grief when people refused to let pain win. Every hug from a child, every thank you from a parent, was proof that the smallest kindness could echo louder than any loss. As he lay awake that night, Keanu thought about all the people he'd meet next, the children who would sit in those colorful rooms, the parents who would find a moment of peace, the strangers who would feel less alone because one young woman believed in the power of hope. He closed his eyes and made himself a promise. He would never let that light go out, no matter how hard the road ahead. It was early spring when Keanu and Ethan found themselves standing outside a new children's hospital on the edge of Los Angeles. The day was bright but chilly, and the air smelled of blooming flowers and fresh paint. Inside, workers were putting the final touches on what would become the biggest Lily's Light playroom yet. Colorful murals covered the walls, flowers, stars, and butterflies that Lily once drew in her notebooks when she dreamed of feeling free. As they walked through the hallway, Keanu watched Ethan talk with nurses and staff, explaining how the space would work. Ethan's shoulders were straighter now, his voice clear and calm. Seeing him this way made Keanu's chest ache with pride. He could almost hear Lily laughing, telling them they were making her proud. But not everyone felt the same. Rumors had begun to swirl online. A popular gossip blog posted an article claiming Lily's Light was just another celebrity vanity project, hinting that the money might not be going where it should. Keanu knew how these lies worked. They spread like wildfire, feeding on people's hunger for scandal. It didn't matter that none of it was true. The seed of doubt was enough to make donors hesitate. One afternoon, while Ethan was checking supply lists in the new playroom, Keanu sat alone in the staff lounge, staring at his phone. Hateful comments rolled across the screen. "He's just doing this to look good. He doesn't really care about those kids. He's buying redemption for his sad past." Each word felt like a tiny cut. He felt anger bubbling up, an emotion he tried so hard to keep buried. But then he heard a small voice at the door. "Mr. Keanu?" He looked up to see a boy no older than 10, with bright brown eyes and a surgical mask covering half his face. The boy held a small, stuffed bear missing one ear. "My name's Daniel," the boy said shyly. "Are you really making this room for kids like me?" Keanu felt his heart crack open. He nodded and knelt so they were eye to eye. "Yes, I am. For kids just like you." Daniel stepped closer, lowering his mask for a moment. His skin was pale, and his hair had started to fall out from the treatments. But his smile was the strongest thing in the room. "My mom says you're a good man. She said Lily's Light is gonna help me, and my friends feel happy when we feel bad. Is that true?" Keanu reached out and gently touched Daniel's tiny bear. "It's true. You deserve a place to laugh and play. You deserve to feel like a kid, even when you're sick." Daniel's eyes lit up. "Thank you, Mr. Keanu. I'm gonna draw you a picture for the wall. It'll be you and Lily and me and my bear, all flying like superheroes." Keanu couldn't help but laugh, his throat tight with emotion. "That would make me very happy." When Daniel left, Keanu stayed kneeling on the floor, the boys' words ringing in his mind. He didn't care what the gossip blogs said. He cared about Daniel. He cared about every child who needed to remember they were more than an illness or a hospital bed. That night, he sat down with Ethan and told him they needed to do more, not for the critics, but for the kids. They decided to host an open day at the hospital. They invited the community, families, doctors, and nurses, anyone who wanted to see Lily's Light with their own eyes. No fancy speeches, no press walls, just truth and love. The day came and the halls filled with people. Children ran through the new playroom, touching the colorful walls. Giggling as they tumbled across beanbags and soft rugs, parents stood in the corners, tears brimming in their eyes. They saw what Lily's light really was, not a headline, but a living promise. Keanu watched as Daniel ran up to show him the drawing he made. It was messy and full of color. 3 stick figures with capes, a bear with a big smile. Above them were 3 words that made Keanu's eyes blur. "We are family." By the end of the day, the truth drowned out the lies. The community rallied behind them, offering to volunteer, donate, and spread the word. The local news came too, but this time they didn't care about gossip. They focused on the laughter echoing through the hallways, the new hope written on parents' faces. That night, after everyone left, Keanu and Ethan sat alone in the empty playroom. The moonlight filtered in through the big windows, casting soft shadows on the walls painted with Lily's favorite flowers. Ethan leaned back against the wall, exhausted but smiling. "Do you think she'd be happy?" Ethan asked. Keanu looked around at the bright pillows, the stacks of books, the shelves lined with toys. He closed his eyes and imagined Lily's voice, light, playful, full of mischief. He felt her there, somewhere in the corners where hope lived. "She is happy," Keanu said quietly. "She's here. She's everywhere." Ethan nodded, his eyes drifting shut. The fight wasn't over. The rumors might come back. The critics might whisper again. But Keanu knew they had built something real, something that could not be erased by cheap words. They had given Lily's light a home, and it would keep growing long after they were gone. And for the first time in a long while, Keanu felt something warm and whole blooming in the empty spaces of his heart. A promise that love, even when scattered like ashes in the wind, could still take root and bloom. Summer came to Los Angeles with its heavy sun and restless heat. The new Lily's Light playroom had become the heart of the hospital. Kids would gather there every day, escaping the sterile smell of medicine. For a while, they colored, they read books, they built castles with soft blocks. Sometimes they just sat with each other, finding comfort in knowing they were not alone. Keanu visited as often as he could. He would slip into the playroom quietly, wearing his old baseball cap and a simple shirt. He didn't want the kids to see him as the man from the movies. He wanted them to see him the way Lily once did, not a star, but a friend who stayed when things were hard. One afternoon, he sat on the floor with Daniel, the little boy with the stuffed bear. Daniel was weaker now, the circles under his eyes darker, but his spirit burned bright. They played with tiny cars on a rainbow mat while Daniel's mother watched from a corner chair. Her eyes tired but grateful. "Mr. Keanu," Daniel asked, pushing a car across Keanu's knee, "do you think people go away forever when they die?" Keanu felt his breath catch. He looked at the boy's thin hands, the bear tucked in his lap. He thought of Lily, of everyone he had lost. "No, Daniel," he said softly, "I think they stay, right here." He tapped his chest, and here, he tapped Daniel's. "Daniel, thought about that?" Then he nodded and leaned against Keanu's arm. "When I go, will you remember me?" Keanu wrapped an arm around his small shoulders, pulling him closer. "Always. You'll be right here with Lily, flying like superheroes. Remember?" Daniel grinned, his eyes sparkling for a moment before they drooped shut. He fell asleep leaning on Keanu, the cars forgotten on the mat. Keanu didn't move. He sat there until Daniel's mother carried him gently back to his room. Later that evening, Keanu found Ethan in the hospital cafeteria, talking to a couple who had lost their daughter last year. They wanted to bring Lily's light to their city, to keep their daughter's name alive. Ethan promised he would help them start a new playroom. He spoke with the confidence of a man who had learned that grief could be a bridge, not a wall. When they were alone, Keanu clapped a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You're becoming the man Lily always believed you were," he said. Ethan looked at him, tears threatening to fall. "I couldn't have done any of this without you. We did it together, and with her." But behind their gentle smiles, both men felt a quiet heaviness. The children they met were so brave, but some of them wouldn't get better. Each new bond came with the risk of another heartbreak. Some nights, Keanu wondered if his heart could take any more. Yet he knew Lily would have told him to keep going, to keep showing up, even when it hurt. And then the day came when Daniel slipped away. Keanu got the call at dawn. He dressed without thinking, drove to the hospital, and sat with Daniel's mother in the still room. The small boy lay under a soft blanket, his stuffed bear tucked in beside him. Keanu touched Daniel's tiny hand and closed his eyes, whispering a promise to carry him. Just as he carried Lily. The funeral was small. Family, nurses, a few volunteers from Lily's Light. They stood in a circle under a big oak tree. Daniel's mother held the bear against her chest, her eyes brimming with tears. Keanu didn't speak. There were no words to fix this pain. Instead, he listened as the wind moved through the branches, the leaves whispering secrets only the grieving could understand. After everyone left, Keanu stayed behind, sitting on the grass beside the fresh grave. Ethan stood a few steps away, giving him space. Keanu spoke out loud, his voice raw. "I'm so sorry, Daniel. I wish we could have given you more time, more stories, more superheroes." He paused, brushing a tear from his cheek. "But you're flying now, aren't you, with Lily, watching over us?" When he finally stood, Keanu felt the weight of Daniel's memory join Lily's inside his chest. Another light he would protect with everything he had left. Days later, they honored Daniel in the playroom. The kids painted a mural on one wall, a big bear with a missing ear, soaring through the clouds, his tiny cape fluttering behind him. Above the bear, in bright letters, they wrote Daniel's Corner. It was their promise that every child who walked through those doors would feel less alone. But as the paint dried on the walls, a bigger storm was brewing. The gossip blogs that once spread rumors about the charity now twisted Daniel's story into something cruel. Headlines screamed that Lily's Light was exploiting sick children for sympathy. They posted photos of Keanu at the funeral, private moments meant only for grieving hearts. The lies spread like poison, infecting the minds of people who didn't bother to look deeper. Ethan was furious. He wanted to fight back, to scream at the world that they were wrong. But Keanu stopped him. "We don't fight lies with anger," he said. "We show the truth. We keep showing up. For Lily, for Daniel, for the next kid who needs us." They both knew the road ahead would be rough, but they also knew Lily's light was bigger than any rumor. It lived in every child's smile, every mother's hug, every mural painted by tiny hands. And deep down, Keanu felt something stronger than the noise. A quiet certainty that even in the darkest moments love could survive anything. Autumn arrived with crisp air and trees dressed in gold and red. For Keanu, the changing leaves felt like Lily's Light itself, proof that something beautiful could grow from endings. The playrooms had now spread to 4 more cities. Each one carried pieces of Lily, Daniel, and every child who had walked through those colorful doors. Each one was a quiet promise that no child would ever feel as alone as Lily once did. But the rumors didn't stop. Every few weeks, another cruel story would pop up, twisting the truth. Some donors grew nervous, asking questions that made Ethan's shoulders tighten with frustration. Keanu felt the burden too. But he always reminded Ethan, "The kids are watching us. They don't care about the noise. They care that we keep showing up." They did more than show up. They grew stronger. They brought in honest people to help, lawyers, trusted accountants, volunteers who shared the same heart. They posted open financial reports online, daring anyone to find a lie. And slowly, the truth fought its way through the cracks. Families stepped forward to defend Lily's Light, sharing photos of their children playing, laughing, dreaming in the rooms that Lily's memory had built. One night, Keanu and Ethan sat in the old guest house where Ethan had once arrived so broken he could barely look up from his shoes. Now, the young man sat cross-legged on the couch, sorting through letters kids had sent, drawings, thank you cards, stories scribbled in wobbly handwriting. He read each one out loud, his voice carrying the innocence and hope of children who knew nothing about gossip or fame. "Listen to this one," Ethan said, laughing softly. "Dear Mr. Ethan and Mr. Keanu, thank you for my superpower. I feel happy when I come here. When I grow up, I will help kids too. Love, Mia." Keanu took the letter and held it to his chest. "That's it," he said. "That's Lily's Light. It's not just about us keeping a promise anymore. It's about them picking up the torch one day." He thought about Lily then, How her one small wish, to feel close to someone who gave her hope, had turned into a chain of hope that seemed unstoppable now. It made him wonder what else they could do. Maybe they could take it beyond hospitals, bring the light to shelters, schools, places where kids needed a hand to hold in the dark. As he sat there dreaming of the next steps, Ethan watched him closely. "You know," Ethan said, "Lily wrote something once in her journal. She said, 'One small light can make the darkness less scary, but many lights together can make the darkness beautiful.' I never understood it until now." Keanu felt his throat tighten. She was right, and were never letting her light go out. They planned a candlelight vigil for the anniversary of Lily's passing. They didn't want it to be a sad event. They wanted it to be a celebration, a living reminder that loss could grow into love. They invited every family, every volunteer, every donor who believed, and when the night came, hundreds of people gathered in the park near the first playroom they had ever built. Children ran through the grass holding tiny lanterns. Parents stood side by side, whispering prayers for the ones they had lost and the ones still fighting. When it was time, Keanu stepped up to the small wooden stage. He looked out at the sea of lights, so many little flames flickering in the dark. "This is Lily's light," he said, his voice steady and warm. "This is Daniel's light. This is every child's light who reminded us that hope is stronger than pain. Thank you for carrying it with us. Thank you for believing that love can outlive anything." Ethan joined him, placing a candle at Keanu's feet. Soon, others stepped forward, adding their candles until the stage glowed like a sunrise. For a moment, no one spoke. The wind brushed through the trees, the flames dancing, unbroken. When the vigil ended, families stayed behind, hugging each other, sharing stories. Keanu felt a small hand slip into his. He looked down to see a little girl with bright eyes and a scarf wrapped around her head. She handed him a folded piece of paper. "For you," she said shyly. "It's Lily." Keanu unfolded the drawing. It was a stick figure girl with a big, shining heart and wings that stretched across the whole page. Under it, the girl had written, "Thank you for giving her wings." Keanu knelt down, hugging the girl gently. "Thank you for helping her fly." As he stood there in the park, surrounded by tiny lights, Keanu felt something inside him settle. The grief would never disappear. The pain of losing people you love never fully goes away. But he had learned that it could be shaped into something beautiful, something that could light the way for others when their own nights felt too dark. Lily was gone. Daniel was gone. But their light, their tiny sparks of courage and kindness, would live on in every child who stepped into those rooms. It would live on in Ethan, whose quiet bravery turned loss into purpose. And it would live on in Keanu, a man once broken by too many goodbyes, but now held together by every small light. He promised to protect, and as the last candles flickered in the park, he closed his eyes and whispered a promise to the sky. "As long as I'm breathing, your light will never fade."